Hello, team. Welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. This is Ukraine War News Update, first part thereof for the 3rd of August 2025. I'm confined to my room at the moment on holiday. I'm not very well. I brought an illness with me. My partner's daughter's back in the UK. She lives with us, and she reckons she has COVID. Like, oh, brilliant! That could explain it all. I'm feeling absolutely rough. Anyway, uh, onwards and upwards. We start with the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. And we see a downtick in the number of personnel lost from a Russian point of view, 920. So that is telling us something, although vehicles and fuel tanks up to 135. So that's a fairly decent number. And artillery systems, 43, almost double the daily average. Two troop carrying airfields and no tanks there, no MLRS, no anti aircraft warfare system. So I think the Russians are utilizing a lot of motorcycles at the moment. A lot of videos I'm seeing coming from the front lines, an attack on Seversk just now, other videos show that they really are using a lot of motorbikes. That seems to be the main thrust of their attack at the moment, thrust of their attacks. So that would, I guess, back up these sorts of figures. Not too many videos I'm going to show you concerning sort of drone strikes and whatnot. This one was pretty interesting, just come out. Ukrainian pilots from the Signum unit identified a Russian camp called Rublevka in the Lyman sector. The site included shelters, vehicles, and supplies. The camp was destroyed after aerial reconnaissance. Rublevka is an elite district near Moscow. This is quite a well set up camp. Um, with some pretty decent dugouts and whatnot. And the drones here just have free reign to, now they found it, to fly around it. This one just gets through that corner of the netting, and there are some vehicles behind it. Looks like a canker and something else. A Scooby Doo van just there, and some of the vehicle, and Bosch. There you go. That's the end of that. So yeah, interesting. Once they find a place like that, of course, it should be open season. Okay, this we're going to go on to some bridge footage now. The first one is good news for the Ukrainians. Now, quite incredible. This absolutely huge explosion. This is the second time I've seen a bridge that has been mined inside Russia with a whole stack of previously they were stacked on part of the infrastructure underneath the bridge. Here in this video, and I'll play it out again, the drones, I'm sorry, the mines, the TM62 anti-tank mines are hanging down one side of one of the sort of structure, the pillars here. There, look at all of those mines just ready to go. So this is some deep sabotage taking place where teams are getting in, laying mines under bridges, and then sometime later those mines are detonated by an exploding drone, and that causes quite an issue. So this will affect logistics inside Russia. Pretty amazing flying of the drone here. That it rather than coming back out of the bridge, out from under the bridge, it drives through the bridge pillar system, and then bang, there you go. So that's good news for the Ukrainians. Bad news for the Ukrainians here in Kherson, and it is getting worse and worse and worse in Kherson. So here you can see a guided glide bomb slamming into a bridge in Kherson on Korabel Island. An FAB strike takes it out there. And here's the aftermath. Kherson regional authorities have shown the aftermath of the Russian strike on the bridge and are urging residents of the Korabel district to evacuate. Logistical challenges will make it difficult to deliver food, and a gas pipeline was damaged, leaving the neighborhood without gas supply. So this looks like one of those sort of islands in the delta that is fed by bridge, and the Russians just destroyed a bridge. This is, I think, pretty horrific activity from the Russians. They are making life in Kherson absolute hell for the Ukrainians there. So, yeah, really terrible to see that. And they didn't stop there. They have then attacked it this morning. Continuous terror in Kherson. Russian forces would once again attack Kherson from the air, reportedly striking near the bridge. Yesterday, local authorities had already urged residents of the Horobel district to evacuate following a previous strike on the bridge. So bad times there in Kherson. And then some 20 kilometers up the river, a Russian base located um, 20 kilometers from the Dnipro River, sorry, not up the river, in the occupied Kherson Oblast was hit by Ukrainian forces. Sorry, words. Russian channels online claim a number of Russians killed and wounded in the strike. So no BDA coming out from that strike yet, but it looks fairly significant. That's supposedly a Russian base. It's always, yeah, odd to see just cars normally driving past on their way to work or something as a massive explosion's taken place, causing destruction um, in the local vicinity. Now we're going to move on to Myrnogorod. Pokrovsk and Myrnogorod not looking good around there. Talk about infiltration and sabotage on the ground in the Pokrovsk area behind Ukrainian lines. Russians are very active. Um, it is thought that possibly they've had success here again due to rotating Ukrainian forces. So yeah, it's not looking good. Myrnogorod is just uh, east of Pokrovsk, and you can see the scale of destruction there. So yes, the Ukrainians having some success up in Sumy, and that's good. But Pokrovsk, Myrnogorod looking really dodgy. Seversk, they're moving in on there from the east. Chasiv Yar, Konstantinivka, Toretsk sort of area. Although the Ukrainians are also pushing back in Kamyanska on the Zaporizhia front, down the south next to the reservoir. So some areas are good for the Ukrainians or looking better. Some areas are looking pretty uh, bad. And this is one of them. Myrnogorod, I mean, just getting absolutely tanked here by the looks of it from artillery, guided glide bombs. I'm not quite sure. Multiple launch rocket systems. Talking of guided glide bombs, there's quite a bit of footage of Ukrainian usage of them. I could include all sorts. They're just things blowing up, right? So it's trying to pick out ones that say something a little bit different. So here there are six. So there's 2 planes worth hitting positions in Kliobike in Kharkiv. So that's I find that interesting because that's you've got the Vovchansk, Litsy areas, the 2 sectors just north of Kharkiv, where the Russians they've just started pushing a little bit back in Vovchansk. But here's an area near there where the Ukrainians are utilizing guided glide bombs. So I thought that was worth sharing. Now, just a bit of a smorgasbord of stuff here. At least 42 streets in Makhachkala, so this is Dagestan, are without electricity due to an accident at the Teplichny Kombinat substation. A transformer is also on fire in the city of Kaspisk, and power outages are possible in the city. So I don't know if this is an accident or sabotage, but a couple of incidents of right on the Caspian Sea there of I don't know something happening. And we also have this definitely does look like sabotage. Radu Hilsu, Romanian analyst, political analyst, saying, "Why does the fire at the ammunition factory in Sugir in Romania look like Russian sabotage? The fire is at the mechanical plant in Sugir. Yet another event that bears all the hallmarks of sabotage. So far, no one has been attributed responsibility, but I hope we are not stupid enough to believe that it was an accident. The fire destroyed products that were to be delivered, according to Economy Minister Radu Muruta. He does not say where they were to be delivered, but we know that ammunition was delivered from Sugir to Ukraine. For the sake of the argument, let's assume it was not for Ukraine. In any case, the damage is estimated to be around 5 million euros in ammunition and destroyed infrastructure. And it's only thanks to the rapid and exceptional intervention of the Alba, Murez, and Brasov emergency services that a major catastrophe was avoided. In my opinion, this is a premeditated and operational criminal act. In cases of sabotage, I consider this to be final attribution is very difficult, um, as I consider this to be so an act of sabotage. Since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, over 100 acts of sabotage targeting defense or critical infrastructure have been recorded in Europe. 66 such acts of sabotage have been attributed, at least in part, by European authorities to Russia. I mean, I don't understand why this isn't like right war. The actual not that I kind of want war with Russia, but like it's this weird situation where hybrid warfare activities don't invoke Article 5. They don't invoke anything other than, well, we think it's Russia, and then let's keep that quiet. So Russia attacked infrastructure inside Europe, in cyber attacks, in information attacks, in actual sabotage attacks. The attribution of these acts is complicated by Russia's modus operandi in recent years. As part of its hybrid warfare, Russia uses local individuals as criminal extremist groups for sabotage, intimidation, and asymmetric attacks on European territory, and very rarely uses its own GRU, SVR, or FSB assets. And that's very clever of the Russians. Of course, they're going to be doing that. Therefore, it's likely that in Romania, we will also find out that a person set the fire, a person who was recruited on Telegram, paid in cryptocurrency or something similar. Most likely, the Romanian police, which has opened a criminal case for destruction by negligence, will find at the end of the investigation that we are talking about a perpetrator with financial or mental health problems, problems with addiction such as drugs or gambling. The pattern I'm describing here is the most common among perpetrators of sabotage in Europe. Vulnerable targets recruited online, paid anonymously. We already know all this information from previous cases. If we imagine that this is what is happening across Europe, with more arms factories being set on fire, more railway lines being cut, more logistics hubs being burned down, you should know that until the beginning of 2022 invasion, almost no such incidents have been recorded in Europe for a long time, and subsequently acts of sabotage almost increase almost vertically in number. 6 in 2022, 14 in 2023, 44 in 2024. These are the only ones that Prevail Partners, a UK security and intelligence gathering company, has identified and found to be directly or indirectly, completely or partially attributable to Russia. However, in 2025, we already have several cases similar to the one in Sochi, such as the most well-known case involving a Rheinmetall arms factory in Spain, which is caused by an explosion. And then there's a list of Russian operations by country per year. I am convinced that Romania was a target of Russian sabotage last night, considering all the information we already have. So this will be 2 nights ago about Russia's modus operandi, techniques, tactics, procedures, and objectives, some of which have been publicly expressed by Russia's top war criminals over the years. This sabotage has several objectives on 2 different levels. The first level is physical, where the objects are fairly easy to guess, to plot, at least temporarily, the operation of a factory, which will lead to decrease in the ammunition available to Ukrainian soldiers, generating material losses both through the act of sabotage itself and, at most, the loss of contracts held by the company subordinate to Rome Arm. The second level, which is perhaps more important than the first, is psychological. Here, and we can only guess. But we know that the Russians have several clear objectives: to exploit fear, to demonstrate their power by affecting the European military industrial complex, thus changing perceptions of Russia's position, and finally undermining trust in the institutions that are supposed to protect us, increasing fear about Russia's capabilities, and at the institutional level, channeling efforts to combat Russia in terms of communication and physically towards areas intended by the Russians. And then finally, here Hosu says, since 2022, we have repeatedly said that Romania is subject to hybrid warfare, with active measures being taken against our society and institutions. I've been ridiculed and criticized as an alarmist. I'm glad to see that people like Cosmin Popa, Armand Gosu, historians, university professors, and experts on the former Soviet space. Um, there's lots of other people's talks about here, investigative journalists, etc., have demonstrated in several investigations for Snoop and Rise Project the involvement of Russians in destabilizing Romania and the direct links between Kalin Georgescu and the GRU. Are speaking out clearly with unquestionable expertise and experience about exactly the same thing. Russia is waging war against Romania. It is important that we understand and accept reality in order to be able to act coherently and effectively. And here, this is me talking. You can talk. You can substitute Romania with other countries in Europe. This is Russia waging war on Europe. I say that we are at war with Russia. It's just that we don't know it. Like, Russia is at war with us, even if we don't know that we're at war with Russia. They are at war with us. The fight at UN Sujir is part of this hybrid war, with implications on both a material and cognitive level. This is because we are dealing with a full-scale war in Ukraine, which is spreading kinetically to Romania, drones accidentally falling in Dobrogea during an election year, sabotage such as the fire at Sujir, and a war that is being waged on our minds. My question is whether we can afford to let Russia conquer our minds by using our vulnerabilities, our fears, and our legitimate frustrations about domestic politics, or whether we enlist on this front as well, begin to protect ourselves, build lines of defense, and eventually even counterattack. Question for both institutions and each of us. is for both institutions and for us personally, because each of us is a target, but also a potential soldier in the information war against Russian assaults. That's the only thing that would really bother the Russians. Okay, interesting there from Radu Hosu. Yes. So, moving on, 5 rail cars carrying ship fuel derailed in Russia on August the 2nd en route to Vanino port. 2 tankers overturned, 1 million rubles worth of damage. I don't know if sabotage or anything is involved in there, but that's going to help the Ukrainians. Fuel failing to get to intended destinations there and causing all sorts of problems. Then we have another Russia on fire story here from Tim White. This caught my eye, not least because Yekaterinburg, the fourth biggest city in Russia, is a potential hotspot of dissent. Officials say a single parked car caught fire here, causing this building with car dealerships to burn. So this is a major fire in Yekaterinburg. Um, I haven't given you a Russia on fire for some time, but there you go. Hashtag Russia on fire. Okay, moving on to distant strikes, and quite a lot to talk about in this segment. Okay, so first of all, we have the Russian attacks on Ukraine. 83 drones and missiles sent into Ukraine. 76 drones, 60 of which were shot down or intercepted one way or another. That's an all right interception rate. I guess 1 out of 1 Iskander M ballistic missile was taken out. In fact, there is imagery. I don't have it to share with you here, but I did see a video of what looked like the ballistic missile shot down in the Kiev region caught on camera. Then we have 0 out of 5 S-300, S-400 ballistic missiles. So these are surface-to-air missiles used in ground attack mode, usually at places like Kharkiv or Sumy, very close to the border. They won't have the range of, say, an Iskander ballistic missile. And they're very difficult to shoot down. Not only if they're used close to the border, do you not have much time to acquire them as targets, but also they're just very difficult to shoot down. And if you don't have anti-ballistic missile air defenses in those areas, then you're in trouble. 0 out of 1 KH-22 cruise missile was shot down. So fairly difficult night for some of those missiles, but not too much um, to report from the Russian attacks on Ukraine, other than here, Mykolaiv, a missile strike on a residential district in Mykolaiv destroyed private homes and damaged civilian properties. 3 people who have been hospitalized, and emergency services are working on the scene. We have here the aftermath of the KH-22 missile. So that was that missile that got through the KH-22 there. You can see at the bottom of the list. That was what hit Mykolaiv. 3 private homes were completely destroyed, while 23 other private houses and 12 apartment buildings were partially destroyed or damaged. So that is a missile sent into a residential area, destroying residential buildings. And that is a war crime. What are we doing about it? Almost certainly nothing. A Russian drone strike completely destroyed a temporary humanitarian aid warehouse, Blue Yellow, in Kiev 2 nights ago. The facility used for storing supplies from Lithuania before they reached the front was nearly empty at the time, so that's one lucky thing, I guess. Only protective gear for staff and medics was inside, but that was sadly destroyed. Russia destroying humanitarian aid there, so yeah, thanks, Russia. And then in Kramatorsk, that was hit 2 nights ago, I think it was, or maybe even be 3 nights ago. Body of a woman was finally recovered there from a residential building hit on, July the 31st. 4 people are now known to have been killed after the airstrike targeted the city centre, according to local administration. You can see the destruction of the building there, just absolutely massive destruction from horrific attacks by Russia on the center of Kramatorsk, which is not too far from the front line in that Seversk direction. But yeah, look at the buildings behind them, the huge destruction done there. Now we're going to go to another busy night of Ukrainian strikes on Russia. Drones attacked multiple targets overnight in Voronezh, Crimea, Adler, Sochi, and Kstovo, Nizhny Novgorod region. Reported strikes included the 810th Russian Brigade air defense sites oil depots and warehouses near airports. Fires and damage were reported, some caused by air defense activity. Right, let's go and look in detail, more detail at some of these. So Voronezh was definitely in the crosshairs last night. Um, Not 100% sure what was struck in Voronezh, but that's what it looked like last night, with lots of people around taking photos. I'll return to this idea of people in front of burning things, taking selfies. Voronezh, as a result of electronic warfare means, uh, sent a drone, or drone was sent off course there and crashed into a power line. That's going to have caused issues. I don't know if that is what the fire in the previous video is from. I don't know. But that took place in Voronezh. And then an oil refinery burning in Adler, Sochi. I'm not sure it is a refinery, but you can see in the next video a Lyuti drone. So more Ukrainian kamikaze drones are arriving in Sochi and Adler, targeting Rosneft oil depots. It's not a refinery, it's a depot. It appears that the airspace over Russian-occupied ATPGEO was once again used for their approach. So you can see that um, drone coming in there and striking in the uh, Adler area of Sochi. I'll play that out again, but yeah, just to what was I going to say? Essentially, what we're seeing here is another um, strike on Russian oil infrastructure. This is very useful. The use of Lyuti drones here is noted, as you can see there. It's flying over and slams into somewhere that had already been hit. So there's multiple hits on that particular facility. I don't know if this is last night or the night before, but Max 25 reports the consequences of drone attacks on railway logistics in a Rostov region. So some kind of substation hit there that probably is providing the railway its energy. So electric substation hit, but I don't know if that's last night or the night before. And moving on, we have something burning in the area at Kstovo refinery, one of the largest in Russia. So that will hurt if there is significant damage done there, or a refinery in Kstovo, Russia tonight. So we're going to go. Well, no. First of all, actually, we'll go to Cyber Boroshino, an OSINT group that looks at BDA battle damage assessment, and reports that Defense Forces drones struck two fuel tanks. Oh no, we are going to Sochi. In Sochi's Bazovi Evia Palivny operator complex, which supplies and refuels Sochi airports and key Black Sea hubs. So this is right next to the airport. What the explosions that we've seen in Sochi, these big fuel tanks there, they are what are still on fire this morning. As you can see here, Sochi still burning. And then we're going to look at, so first of all, that's what's going on this morning still. Massive fire right next to the airport. So that's going to have closed the airport, no doubt. And then you get this. So this is the first one. This is just driving past. It's selfie time. Let's be on our mopeds and drive past this burning oil depot. Now, I don't know if these are the same people as are here, right? Two of the same, whether she's the same person and he's the same person. But look at these. So I would imagine that the Russian authorities would get onto these people and they're going to get a knock on their door for kind of glorifying the, I don't know, the damn it, I don't know what they're doing. Just an excuse to TikTok or whatever. But yeah, burning fuel depot at Sochi there, providing entertainment for the locals, it appears. So more footage from Rosneft Kubaneft product oil depot in Adler, which was targeted in the attack. Preliminary reports indicate 4 to 5 impacts on the facility. So a number of places hit, although most of the information we have is on that Sochi strike. But it looks like Kstovo could well be a significant strike. Then you've got stuff taking place in Voronezh and potentially other places as well. More details will emerge throughout the day. So the Ukrainians having a good week in terms of strikes on Russia again. And then Russia's having to deal with other problems too: flood, fire, storms. You got tornadoes here and storms happening. There's been an awful lot of rain. I mean, while I've been away from the UK, my mate sent me a photo of his garden that was completely underwater. So and there are storm warnings for tonight or today in Scotland, but huge rainfall and floods and whatnot going on in Russia. I saw yeah, I've seen a number of videos of real challenges the Russians have. Here's a bridge that is completely swept away by a mass of wood and stuff that's been swept down the river. I don't know where from, but that bridge is never going to withstand that kind of uh, debris floating down the river. So, Russia having some challenges. Also, there's the volcano near Kamchatka. It's the first time it exploded in 600 years. And it's now exploding. It's obviously all connected to the tectonic activity going on around there. So Russia having quite a lot to deal with at the moment. And of course, it sounds horrible, but the more issues they have in domestically, the more their resources, time, effort, and money is going to be diverted, or they are going to face a dilemma. Do they continue spending crazy amounts of money on a war, or do they actually try and look after their own population? So, like, it sounds horrible, but stuff like this, from Ukraine's kind of strategic point of view, stuff like this happening is good news for Ukraine, even if it's bad for like humankind in Russia's case. Um, Now, here we have, and there are two cases of this. So, my goodness, it's all pretty desperate. This is Donetsk, which used to be one of the richest cities in Ukraine. It's now under Russian control, and they are struggling to get water. Here's an elite Russian paratrooper. I don't know if it is or if it is a retiree, but he's wearing his um, paraphernalia there. Is seen historically conquering a puddle. Donetsk can only envy such achievements, says no reports. Uh, yeah, so then we have another video of someone collecting water from a burst mains somewhere in Donetsk as well on the roadside from another puddle. Donetsk 2025, a resident of what was once the richest cities, one of the richest cities in Ukraine, collecting water from a puddle formed by a burst pipe. The liberators have done their job. It's pretty desperate. That kind of follows on from what I was saying yesterday. I had a few threads on water in Donetsk being an issue for the Russians there. Now, Ukraine and Russia have agreed on a prisoner exchange involving 1,200 people. Zelensky reported that after talks with the NSDC Secretary Umarov. So he's now this is a former defense minister, is now a Security Council um, chappie. And the PO head, Yermak, the presidential office head, Andrei Yermak, work on the list continues, including efforts to return civilians and abducted children. That would be from Russia to Ukraine. Russian sabotage, but this is referencing what I was, or what I meant. Sorry, this is putting more meat on the bones for what I referenced earlier with regard to activity in and around and behind Pokrovsk area. Russian sabotage behind Ukrainian lines is increasing, forcing the defense forces to deploy special reserves. The situation is especially tense in Pokrovsk, Dobropilya, and Novopavlivka, with Sersky, the commander in chief, coordinating counter sabotage actions on the ground. So it's worrying stuff there. Eurominer Press has an article. Sersky says Russian total infiltration is underway in Pokrovsk, but Ukrainian forces are neutralizing these attempts. Donetsk Oblast sees the fiercest battles as Russia has been trying small groups instead of mass assaults. Just the way that Russia's changed their attacks into much smaller attacks, motorbikes, obviously, but then infiltration into urban areas. It is definitely a challenge around Pokrovsk. I haven't yet read this article from The Economist, but I'm looking forward to doing so today. This is Shashank Joshi. I don't know whether he wrote it. He is an Economist defense correspondent, so probably did. Um, Killing implies murder, which would be wrong, says Titan. She prefers to call her job liquidating Russians. The unit is one of the small but growing number of all-female drone crews. Genitals are irrelevant to flying drones, notes Maria Belinska. Good quote there. So this is an article that, and you can see in the picture, there are two female snipers there, an article talking about the prevalence of women on the front lines and the work that they are doing to fight against the Russians. So I look forward to reading that. Now we hear that Ukraine's HUR, GUR, depending on how it's transcribed, the intelligence, military intelligence, says it's obtained documents on Russia's newest Bore A nuclear sub, the Knyaz Pukarsky, exposing design, crew, and vulnerabilities. The newest component of Russia's nuclear triad is no longer a secret. This is going to be so prized by, say, American intelligence. Like what the if the Ukrainians can get serious, if they can hack and get serious details on the newest Russian nuclear sub, then the Americans are going to be like, "Yeah, thank you very much, we'll have that." And the Ukrainians hopefully say, "Yep, brilliant. Can we have a Patriot air defense system?" Like Ukraine have got some leverage here, or some, they hold some cards. Their cyber activity is going to be useful for other nations and not just themselves. Ukraine's NABU and SAPO, so the two of the organizations deeply involved in the controversial law that was just created, and then there's been a subsequent law, or it's in motion to try and row back what was done in terms of moving the anti-corruption agencies under the auspices of the prosecutor general in Ukraine, and thus making them not independent. And now it's moving back towards independence. And these two organizations have uncovered large-scale corruption in the procurement of drones and electronic warfare equipment. Among those detained are a sitting MP, and this could be why that law was rushed through initially, which is a real shame if that's the case. The head of Mukachevo District Administration, Serhiy Haidai, the group inflated contract prices by up to 30%. So, a sitting MP who is in the Servant of the People party uh, being detained there. So, that is a real challenge for the Zelensky government. We hear that Steve Witkoff, Trump's golf buddy and real estate mogul mate, is in Moscow, I think, today, to meet with Trump to meet with Putin to be manipulated by the Kremlin once again. So I'm sure that will happen and bring about precisely nothing useful for Ukraine. But there you go. Although the rhetoric has changed from the US, and they are being far tougher on the Kremlin than they previously were, at least rhetorically. Now, the Senate's Russia sanctions bill, I presume this is your Blumenthal and Graham bill, won't be passed before autumn, despite calls from several senators, writes The Hill. While strong supporters of Ukraine in the Senate wanted it approved before the August recess, the decision has effectively been left to Trump for now, at least through the summer. So the big Russia bill, 500, I presume it's a 500% sanctions on Russia, and secondary sanctions on those buying hydrocarbons from Russia or helping Russia. That would have given congressional authenticity to anything that Trump does. Now, Trump's been putting sanctions on other countries or tariffs on other countries unilaterally using emergency measures, which I think is highly controversial. And he is appearing more and more like a dictator, able to just unilaterally do what the hell he wants. However, all is not lost if this bill is not passed for another at least month or so, because Trump does have the ability to unilaterally slap some tariffs and sanctions on um, other nations that aren't playing ball. So, US Congress went on a break without passing a Russia sanctions bill, leaving Trump alone to pressure Putin. Senate hawks said skipping the vote wasted momentum and weakened Washington's message to Moscow. I mean, it does. It's not great, is it? They don't pass this. They go on recess, and that's the end of pressure on Ukraine, on Russia from a congressional point of view for the time being. Real shame. Now, speaking of which, India is to keep buying Russian oil despite Trump's threats, according to New York Times. Now, there was some claims that an Indian refinery was not taking Russian oil. The owners were buying up oil from the US and the UAE, and people are thinking what India was moving away from supporting Russia. But the Indian government has, quote, not given any direction to oil companies to reduce Russian imports, one senior official told the New York Times. So it could just be unilateral decisions from Indian companies rather than any pressure coming from Indian central government. But the UAE is distancing itself from Russia. Banks are cleaning up their client base, according to the Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine. This year, in July, UAE financial institutions tightened control over the activities of Russian companies. About 30% of enterprises from Russia received notices of restrictions on financial transactions or closure of bank accounts. The main reasons for their closure were the lack of untimely response to bank requests, errors in documents, inconsistency of financial flows with the declared activities, connections with countries from the FATF blacklist, or with persons or structures subject to international sanctions, etc., etc. So there could be increased pressure. I don't know if it comes from the United States. Um, EU will be putting pressure on the UK, Canada, Japan on their own will be putting pressure on these countries. But it might take the US to really uh, bring about change. I don't know. But if the UAE are distancing themselves from Russia, that is really good news because they have been a real enabler for Russia during these times of sanctions. Um, and just leaving you with this, and finally, peace. The famous pixel camouflage of the Ukrainians that you will have seen over the last few years quite a bit might well be on the way out. So the Armed Forces of Ukraine will receive new uniform, which will gradually replace their MM14 camouflage, popularly known as the Pixel. Central Directorate for the Development of Material Support has approved for further use a new camouflage pattern, MM25. It's a multicam sort of pattern that you would see, I guess, other forces have. So there, that's a new one, and the old pixelated one is sadly going. But there you go. Anyway, thanks for watching. Really appreciate your support. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. I need to go and clear my sinuses of whatever those Russian saboteurs have put in there. What they're putting something in my tea. I don't know what it is. Anyway, take care, everybody. Speak soon.